Hey, Natasha here. In this video, we are going to discuss how to simplify aspects of your business, not only to be successful, but to also gain your time and your sanity back. So if you want to dive in deeper, I invite you to take my 2-minute Are You the Bottleneck quiz to show who or what is slowing down you and your progress. So when I had my private practice, I frequently found myself distracted by noise. So I would see different business strategies, different marketing campaigns, different promotions, and think to myself, I need that, or that looks really great. I should try that. And, before I knew it, I had a million and one things on my to-do list, and I started a whole bunch of different things. And I was spread so incredibly thin that I was doing little bits of each thing and not doing any of them very well, instead of focusing on one thing and doing that incredibly well. So I want you to ask yourself, what are maybe some things that are blocking me or distracting me from building and or expanding my business, kind of wherever you are in the realm of your business journey? What could be blocking or distracting you? And of the things that you're doing, are you currently working on any activities or projects that are really moving the needle or generating revenue in your business? So those are some questions I want you to ask yourself. So no stick figure, but I have some key pillars that we're going to talk about in this video. And the first of which is essentialism. And I like this term because I feel like it kind of holds all the cards and what really drives this home, because I found not only in my private practice journey, but even in initial pieces of my consulting business, I had kind of historically some of the same patterns, and I have gone back and dialed those in. And I really want to drive this home because it is so sneaky when it happens that sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing it. So what essentialism, what we're talking about here, is the crux of your business, the bare minimum. What are the tasks or things that you actually need to do from start to finish to run your business? Not even talking efficiently, we'll get to that, but what are the main things to get from a referral and or your first touch point with a client or prospective client to the end result after they've worked with you and say, I'm hoping you're getting, a testimonial or a review from them, right? So from start to finish, what are the main things, the only things that need to go from point A to point Z? What are those things? And get rid of everything else that doesn't. So this can be tough because we think we need all the things, like I did for a very long time. So, this looks great, this could work, but what is actually working? What you actually need? When we don't know how to answer that question or really get to the bones of our business, one thing that I find that will help, because this will naturally help the efficiency of your business by doing this. But if you don't know, I want you to ask yourself why. So if you've got, say, some newer elements to your business that you've implemented or you're trying to integrate into your current systems, and figure out why you're doing it. And then ask yourself why again. So, and I've talked about this in other videos, not in a business sense, but we're going to transition it to business because this makes sense. So the whole idea of asking yourself why and doing it, the magic number is 5, is because what happens is when we ask anyone else or even ourselves why we're doing something or why this is important or why, we only ask one time, and usually that initial response answer is a very go-to surface level response. Well, naturally, I did that because I need this, or I think it's really going to work, or whatever. But when you ask yourself why, and you ask yourself why 5 times, you get 5 different responses, because you really have to think about it and you're deducing and you're going, wait a minute, is that why I'm really doing it? Is that why it's necessary? And then you find if that is not essential, get rid of it. And that is how you reduce all this noise, all these distractions from your business. Because every extra element that you have in your business that is non essential is taking up time, is taking up mental bandwidth in your brain. So, in order to expand, because ultimately that's what any of us would like to do, and it doesn't matter what your business is, you want to eventually expand. You want to be able to hire on, you want to have multiple locations, you want to increase your revenue. And that's how you do a lot of these things, right? Is you've got to expand. But if your essential systems aren't in place or you're doing all this extra stuff, you're not going to get there, or at least not in a timely fashion. And you might have to take a lot of extra detours to ultimately get there, if you get there at all. So this is my way of helping you with some of that trial and error and getting rid of that and just simplify all of your systems by asking yourself for each particular system or each particular workflow or each particular whatever it is, and really get down to what's the bones, the true foundation of my business. And that is A, going to get you more efficient, but B, it's going to get rid of everything else that you do not actually need. Okay. Now, focus. So by now, we've eliminated a lot of the distractions. Now it comes to focus. So when we talk about focus, what is focus, right? That is, you're able to put some blinders on and you're focusing. So we remove business distractions, but then what other distractions may you have in your life right now? I like to think of distractions, I'm going to use a different color, as I equate distraction with, I use the word scattered a lot because I feel like that accurately describes my frame of mind when I am out of sorts. I'm scattered. It's like the example I gave in the previous video about having 10,000 tabs open and nothing was happening. That is how I felt because I allowed myself to be very distracted and I had a lot of noise going on in the background, in front of my face, in my ears, all the things. And I kept adding and doing more. So focus, you want to eliminate this scattered feeling. So not feeling, but thought. You want to eliminate all the extra noise that you are hearing, that you might be seeing. So again, it's really focusing on your business. Then what can streamline your business? And when we do this, I want you to think about things that do move the needle that you do need to do. I tend to go back to marketing a lot because there's so many pieces with marketing. We do need marketing for our business. I mean, it's nice when word of mouth is great, but we can't necessarily always rely on word of mouth. So what else can we do? And that is a really easy way to get distracted. Again, when you go to the essentialism and ask yourself why, go with what's working and focus on all the things that are working in your business and do those and expand on those, multiply those. Now, if you're finding that you don't have necessarily things that are working in your business, that's when you shift your focus and be solution focused and go, hey, what else can I do to get this result? Not what's this problem and tackling it as a problem, but be more solution focused of what else could I be doing? And this is a great time then to collaborate with colleagues or network and see what other people are doing, not comparing yourself, but networking and collaborating to get some ideas. If you feel like you are in a space where you may feel like you've tried all the things and haven't gotten the results that you're looking for. But you want to stay focused on what's working and expand on what's working. Don't add other things that's not necessary, because what, again, that's doing is that's not needle moving things. You need to focus on what's actually working. because all the other stuff is just distraction and noise. And so coming to time. So I talk about time a lot because it's super important, and that is time and your energy. I will continue to say this over and over again as your currency. So time is fixed. However, we all have the same amount of time in a day. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And if Sally over here has this like multi-million dollar business or practice, and you're sitting over here going, well, I want that. Why does she have that? And I do. We all have the same amount of time. So it may be two different pieces of that, right? She's in a completely different season of her business. Maybe she's been doing this 10 years longer than you and da 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 da. And, or depending on what the actual scenario is, she has found a way to be efficient, which is what the essentialism piece is about. So it's streamlining, efficiency, but then we look at there's this trap that we get into. And I think this starts well before we end up in our adult professional careers, where we think this exchange for time for money. And I have gone through a lot in my own journey of how I feel about time for money, because we think that we have to work really hard to get X result, right? And so when we do that, and my next video is going to be about some of this piece, which is we tend to attach our worth to our rates. And that's something that we actually need to just like take out of the equation. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to talk about the fact where we detach our association with our time for the amount of money. So what I mean by that, for the sake of this video, is how can you maximize your revenue? So again, if we're not necessarily expanding in this season, but we want to increase our revenue, what are some other options that we can take? And some of those options can be, if you're not already, I've talked about this in previous episodes, is you have private pay clients. That is one way. Another way is to start and or offer different, oh my gosh, I don't know if you can read that. Can I write neater? I will try. Groups. And again, these groups do not need to be through insurance, because you can set up and start a bunch of different types of groups within your own setting, in your own clinic, or even in the community, right? You could do like a falls prevention group. These are for PTs or something, but or like a community integration group, or a safety group, or some kind of like exercise group, or whatever it is. You could establish groups and have a set flat rate for that. And that, so how many people could you see in that group and get paid for that one time at an exponential rate? A group would be a way to do that. Another would be what I think is the obvious thing, but I didn't say it first for that very reason, would be to increase your rates, assuming that you aren't fully insurance based. And if you are, consider expanding to at least advertise or market that you do take private pay, because you can, and there's no reason that you shouldn't, because you get boxed in with insurance companies, right? With contractual rates and limits and things like that. So you don't have a lot of leeway, and that really your margin at that point becomes very limited if you're able to even get out of the red sometimes, depending on, I won't get into the weeds about it, about your ratio and different insurance plans and things like that with their reimbursement. So I would say private pay, groups, and just ultimately increasing your rates. These are other ways to get out of, I have to work X amount of hours to get X amount of revenue. I think, honestly, between the options I just gave, it would be start some groups, have some groups. It's really key. And then last but not least, I keep kind of like breadcrumbing this, but I'm going to do a few dedicated videos to this, but that would be to embrace tech, because if anything is going to save you time, whether you do have a team or you are a solopreneur, tech and AI is going to save you time, sanity, and money. If you really think about it, because again, it'll help with breaking you free and detaching you from that time for money exchange. Because think of all the things that you're already doing on the back end when it comes to admin, when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to your calendar, when it comes to creating resources, marketing, all the things. If you're still doing that all with your pretty brain, that's great. But when we use tech, it's not to replace you, it's only to supplement and expand and help. And by helping, one of the main ways it helps is by saving time. So, those would be some of the key areas for helping to simplify your business so that you can thrive and expand in order to be successful while not having to put in an extra 10 plus hours a week to do so. If anything, you should be saving 10 to 15 hours depending on what all you took from this and what you've implemented in the process. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you in my next video.